All right, hello. We're going to try something a little new. I'm doing this in Zoom again, which seems to be a pretty good hack for recording things. I'm going to try to keep this to 10 minutes, but I will tell you if it's long, I won't make you write the end because I'm going to give you some secret tips and tricks that you'll be happy for the rest of your lives that you learn them. So if I go long, once you get past the last question, if you want to just quit, you can just quit. But I think you will find this very useful. In fact, I think most people who come to class will probably end up going and doing it too. So the main thing we're at 8.4 is what we're getting this from. And those links are everywhere. And the two things that you need to know, the two new vocabulary words, two-way table, which is a table that has two categories in it. And there's what's called a relative frequency table, which is basically the same thing. The difference is the two-way table just has straight numbers, whereas the relative frequency table is the percentages for those numbers. So let's look at that. But those are two words you need to know. So I'm going to jump over here to the reading. And this was the warm-up we did, which I'm going to skip over, but that's a two-way table. Notice these are numbers, totals for the rows, totals for the columns, and totals for the whole table. I'm going to skip that. Here's another example. Two-way table. Different types of transit with totals for each row, two different cities. So I can see like there's 111 people who walk. There are 477 people in Copenhagen. All these people in total who were surveyed were, this many people. From this, there's a lot of questions I can answer, but I can also figure out the percentages of. Like if I ask you the people in Copenhagen who ride a bike, what percentage of this group, you can say, well, it's 267 out of 1,103, that fraction or whatever that is as a decimal number or as a percentage. So if I did that to all these numbers, it would become a two-way table. See in a minute. And here's just another example. Sometimes these have the totals on them, sometimes they don't. If they don't have the totals on them, you have to add them up, which is a total pain. I'm going to show you kind of a hack, that's the shortcut that I would always do, unless the table's really small and I don't have access to a computer. I might not. One more example. This is down in the summary. This is what I ask you to read if things aren't quite making sense. So here is a two-way table of pants and shorts in 243 people. So this actually tells us our total. So we maybe don't necessarily have to add everything up. And their favorite season, so this is just a preference, not necessarily during that time of year, and then which is their favorite time of year, so you can find out some things. If we take these numbers and divide them by the 243 that's right here, that's what gives us these numbers. So 243, let's look at this. 40 divided by 243 is this. 29 divided by 243 is this. 20 divided by 243 is this, and this is the one I can kind of tell is probably right for sure, because 24 divided by 243 would be 10%, it's a little bit less. But this is a frequency table, and sometimes these are expressed as decimal numbers and sometimes as percentages, and honestly, you could even do them as fractions, but I think these numbers are probably more meaningful. So that's what a frequency table is. Similarly, down here, they say if you wanted to figure out like how many people like, let's see, spring, you can add these two numbers together up here, 43 and 20, which gives you 63 over 243 or 0.26. But you get the same thing if you add these two together. You add 0.18 and 0.08 together, you get the 0.26 as well. So either one of those you can use. But the main thing is, this is a two-way table, and I think the name two-way comes from me, but two categories. And then these often will have totals for the rows and columns, and then you always need to know the overall total. And in the frequency table is a result of that, where you're given this. Now, occasionally you might be given a frequency table and have to work backwards and figure out, well, what numbers are these here? That would certainly be a good test question. All right, so that's enough background. What we hopefully did in class, if I can make this, oops, no, I can't get at it because things in my way. Okay, there we go. We did some examples where we actually took a survey and figured things out, and then there were some homework answers. So let's just look at those homeworks real quick. So this was the homework. And so this one, they made this question super easy. I have 100 adults, and these are the numbers for the 100 adults. And then they start asking you questions like, what's the probability that a person has a high school diploma and earns 30,000 less a year? So high school diploma and earns 30, it's 21. Since it's out of 100, I don't have to do any math at all. It's just 21%. They made this easy for us, okay? And the second one, what's the probability that the person has no high school diploma and earns more than 30,000? So that's 2, since it's out of 100. 2 divided by 100, but I'm like, oh, it's 2%. All right, next thing they had was this. All right, so this is where they start asking me questions about this stuff, and I'm like, wow, I don't really want to add all these numbers up for a couple of reasons. One of which is I'm just afraid I'm going to add them up wrong. So here's my cheat. I'm going to go to my spreadsheet if I can get back to it. I'm going to actually create a new spreadsheet. I'm going to paste this in there. It'll paste. Did I copy it? Maybe I didn't copy it. Hold on, let me go back. Let's try it again. Grab all these, just highlighting them, Control C to copy it. And if I can make this my little thing at the top. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm gonna go here, I'm gonna paste it. Okay, so these are the things there. So this is a little mini lesson on Excel. But so these two, obviously 6 plus 19, I could add those in my head, but the other way I can do it is I can do equal this thing, which is B3. If you look at the column, it's in column B. In 3, and I can say plus B2, and it adds those two things up. It's 25. And what's cool about doing it that way, if I change one of these numbers, watch me change this to 7. Now that's 26. It automatically updates, which is why I like doing this way. So notice what that is. That is B3 plus B2. Now the cool thing about that is, if I copy this over, this thing's super smart. It figures out, oh, well, you were doing B3 and B2. If you went over one column, you must want C3 and C2. So it's these two now. And once again, if I change one of these numbers, it updates, which is why I love this. I'm also guaranteed I'm not going to get these wrong. As long as I've got these cells together, it works fine. And I'm going to copy that over once more. So, oh, those all came out to 25. Once again, that doesn't have to be, if I updated one of those, that could be 26. They did that for this particular chart. All right, now I got 3 numbers. So I could do equals, you know, B2 plus C2 plus D2. That would add them all up. B2 plus C2 plus D2. But if I get a really long row or a really long column, that's a pain. So the other way to do this, that'll totally work. The other way to do this is there's a formula called sum. You have to type equals first. That lets the spreadsheet knows that it's a formula and not just you typing. I'm going to put parentheses, and then I can say B2 colon D2. So this basically says B2, and look how it highlighted everything. It's saying, okay, add up everything, because that's what sum means. And I just close that, enter 43. Once again, if I change one of these, it's going to automatically update both this one and this one. I'm going to go back, I forgot what that number was. And once again, I'm going to copy this down. Look up here. This is what's called the formula bar. It's adding these up. When I paste it down one, it's smart enough to realize, oh, you must want the next row. You don't want row 2, you want row 3 now. And I can do the same trick right here. I could either add up these two to get the overall total, or I could sum all 3 of these. Either way, you can probably see, oh, it's going to be 75. Okay, I'm just going to copy this over. Control C, Control V to copy. All right, and once again, the cool thing about this is if I update, maybe make that 1,000, everything automatically updates. So this is a guarantee that not only is my math correct, I'm not going to accidentally make a mistake. There's some calculators that will even do this, but you got to kind of know how to do it. But if you're working at home and you've got a big table and you're supposed to add things up, this is what I always do. I am never going to add anything in a calculator unless it's a very short list and I don't have access to a spreadsheet. All right, now the other kind of questions that I can ask you questions now, like how many people, how many eggs were at room temperature? Oh, it's obvious, it was 25. How many eggs were not hatched? It's obvious, it's 32. The other question I might ask you is like, what percentage of eggs were cool and hatched? Well, I could ask you how many, and you can say, well, there's 6 cool and hatched. But I could also say what percentage of that is. So one way I could figure that out, this would do the math for me, is I could do equals 6 divided by 75 is the total, okay, and 0.08. That is one way I could do it. The other way I could do it is I could say equal whatever that cell is, which is B2, divided by this cell over here is E4. Okay, and that updates. Now what's cool is if I change this, maybe to 60, this one totally changed because it's a new percentage now. This is a much higher percentage, and my total over here changed. So it did all the math for me again. Okay, so let's see if we can't figure out a quicker way to do all of this. Okay, so I'm going to copy all of this down to here. Do it to 10. All right, I want this to be 60 and not 60. This was 6, I think. Yeah, that was right. Okay. I want this to be, and this one's wrong now, it's okay. So once again, one way I could do this is do equal B2 divided by, and this number here is E2, right? No, E4, E4. That gives me that. Oh, if I wanted a percentage, I can click on my little percentage button. I got a percentage. Now the rest of my table is a little messed up now because I copied all those formulas down. And here's another problem. See, this is 6, so this should be about double. This should be about, about 16%. Watch what happens when I copy this. Not going to quite work. A lot of problems. So here's what happened. B2 to E4. When I moved this over one, this said F4. There's nothing at F4. I need some way to say, oh, wait, don't move that one. I want to keep 75. So there's 2 ways to do this. One is I could just write 75 in there. 75 and divide it. And then if I copied this, all these would be correct. These are probably wrong. I don't know if those are right or not. But the problem is if my totals change up here, this goes to 20. This gets updated, but this is still dividing. And look, I got 124%. So that's not the best way to do it. Oh, that's one way to do it. It totally works as long as I know my total is always 75. But I'd like this to be dynamic and linked to this original table. So here's a little trick that very few people know. Okay. I want to say, okay, when I copy B2, I do want the B2 to become, C2, D2, B3. I want it to update that. I want it to copy, these numbers up here. But I don't want to move this thing. So let's go back to where it was. I want this to stay 75. I want it to always be E4. This is how you lock in a cell when you're copying and pasting. Okay. You're going to say B2 divided by $E locks the E in place, and $4 locks that. So it's always going to be 75, no matter where I copy and paste it. The B2 will change as it moves around as I copy and paste, but the others won't. Okay, so I'm going to copy, paste, and there's all my percentages all at once. If one of these changes, everything updates. My total's always out of 100%. So this is just a nice trick. But once again, the most important thing you need to realize is in a two-way table, my rows add up to some total, my columns add up to some total, and my those totals added together should add up to an overall number. And then to turn it into a frequency table, this number right here is, whatever the original number was, it's my original cell number divided by the overall total. Now this is just nonsense. If I hit enter here, it won't do anything. But that's the formula. Is whatever that original number is, divide. So in this case, 6 divided by 75. And this one here is 23 divided by 75. That's where all these numbers are coming from. So once again, if you didn't understand that trick that I did for you, it's fine. But I wanted you to understand that overall thing. Let's see if there's anything else I want to show you before we're done here. Nope, this is what I did in class. We kind of talked through how to add those up, and then I showed people how to cheat, and then I showed people how to turn those into percentages. So that's what we did in class. I think let me double check questions over here and see if there's anything else I want to tell you. Some review questions. I think you'll be fine on that. All right, have a great day. Thanks for stopping in.